I am Beverly, 62 years old, a retired nurse from Chicago. When my daughter Stephanie was younger, we were inseparable. Everything changed after she married Eric 5 years ago. I never imagined hearing the words that cut through me like a knife at Thanksgiving dinner. Mom, honestly, the best gift would be for you to be gone. After the initial shock and heartbreak, something inside me shifted. I realized maybe it was time to give her exactly what she wanted. If you're watching from somewhere you're truly valued, tap that like button and subscribe. I'm about to show you how sometimes the best response to rejection is reinvention. My journey as a mother began 35 years ago. I was a dedicated nurse at Chicago General, working long hours in the intensive care unit. When Stephanie was born, she became my whole world. Her father, James, and I had such plans for our little family. Those dreams were shattered when James was diagnosed with aggressive pancreatic cancer. Stephanie was just 10 years old when he died after an 8-month battle. I still remember her small hand in mine at the funeral, her face brave despite her tears. Suddenly, I was alone raising our daughter on a single income. I picked up extra shifts and weekend work to maintain our modest home in a good school district. On particularly tough months, I would sell a piece of jewelry or work overtime to make ends meet. Despite my hectic schedule, I created special traditions for us. Sunday evenings were sacred movie nights with homemade popcorn and hot chocolate. During school breaks, we would bake cookies using James's mother's recipes, keeping his memory alive through small rituals. Stephanie was a bright child with a creative streak. She loved art and music, showing remarkable talent for the piano. I scrimped and saved for those weekly lessons, cutting back on my own expenses to nurture her gifts. Sometimes I would sit in the car during her lessons, catching a quick nap before my night shift began. "Mom, you don't have to come to every recital," teenage Stephanie once said, rolling her eyes with adolescent embarrassment. "I wouldn't miss it for the world." I told her, and I meant it. No matter how exhausted I was, I showed up for every performance, school event, and parent conference. Stephanie had her challenging moments during those teenage years. When she was 16, she went through a rebellious phase, staying out past curfew and arguing about house rules. Even during those difficult months, the foundation of our relationship remained strong. "I hate you," she shouted during one particularly heated argument about her boyfriend. "You can hate me right now," I told her calmly, "but I will never stop loving you." By the time she graduated high school, our relationship had stabilized. I still have the thank you card she gave me at her graduation party. "Mom, I couldn't have done this without you. Thank you for believing in me even when I didn't believe in myself." Getting Stephanie through college was my ultimate goal. I worked double shifts for years to build her college fund. When she was accepted to Northwestern University with a partial scholarship, I was overjoyed, but knew we still faced a significant financial gap. "We'll figure it out together," I promised her. And we did. I took on consulting work in addition to my regular nursing job. Stephanie contributed with a campus job and summer internships. Those college years were challenging but rewarding. I downsized to a smaller apartment to reduce expenses. Stephanie thrived academically, making the dean's list consistently. Our Sunday phone calls became our new tradition, and I lived for those weekly updates on her classes, friends, and activities. When she graduated with honors in marketing, I couldn't contain my pride. "That's my daughter," I told anyone who would listen at the ceremony. We took a rare splurge on a nice dinner to celebrate toasting to her future with sparkling cider. Stephanie quickly found a position at a prestigious marketing firm in downtown Chicago. During those early professional years, she would visit me for dinner every Wednesday. She'd bring a bottle of wine and we'd talk for hours about her work challenges and office politics. When Stephanie experienced her first serious heartbreak after dating a colleague for 2 years, she showed up at my door with tear-stained cheeks. I held her through the night as she sobbed, just as I had when she was a child with a skinned knee. "You'll get through this," I assured her. "You're stronger than you realize." 2 years later, when she found a perfect apartment but struggled with the down payment, I didn't hesitate to help. I withdrew $10,000 from my retirement fund, assuring her it was an investment in our future. "I'll pay you back every penny, Mom," she promised. "Just be happy," I told her. "That's all the repayment I need." The little girl who once needed me to check under her bed for monsters had grown into a confident, successful woman. Our relationship, though different from her childhood years, seemed unshakable. I had no idea how drastically things would change when Eric entered the picture. Everything shifted 5 years ago when Stephanie called bubbling with excitement about a man she'd met at a company event. Eric Sullivan was a successful real estate developer who had been a guest speaker. 2 weeks later, she invited me to meet him over dinner. I still remember my first impression of Eric. Tall, impeccably dressed in a tailored suit, with the confident demeanor of someone accustomed to getting his way. He was handsome in a conventional way and articulate when discussing business and politics. Yet something about his smile never quite reached his eyes, especially when he looked at me. "Beverly," he said, taking my hand briefly. "Stephanie has told me so much about you. Fascinating that you've been a nurse all these years. Such a humble profession." Something in his tone made me uncomfortable, but I dismissed it, wanting to give him the benefit of the doubt for Stephanie's sake. She was clearly smitten, hanging on his every word, laughing at all his jokes. Over dinner, I learned Eric came from a wealthy Boston family. He had attended prestigious private schools before graduating from Harvard Business School. When I mentioned Stephanie's hard work through Northwestern, he nodded politely. "Northwestern has certainly improved its reputation in recent years," he remarked, "though nothing quite compares to the Harvard network." I noticed how Stephanie flinched slightly before quickly agreeing with him. It was the first of many such moments to come. Within months, Stephanie's calls became less frequent. When we did speak, our conversations revolved around Eric, his business successes, his opinions on restaurants, his travel plans. My daughter began dropping casual comments about upgrading her wardrobe and changing her hairstyle to match their new social circle. When Stephanie finally invited me to Eric's downtown penthouse, I was eager to reconnect. I brought a homemade apple pie, her childhood favorite. "Oh, Mom," she said, taking the pie with a tight smile. "Eric's actually on a keto diet, and we don't really do processed sugar anymore. But thanks for the thought." Throughout the evening, Eric made subtle comments about my quaint neighborhood and seemed amused by my stories from the hospital. "Not everyone can have stimulating careers in creative fields," he said with a patronizing smile. "Society needs its worker bees too." The first major conflict came during Stephanie's 32nd birthday dinner. I had saved for months to buy her a delicate silver bracelet with her birthstone. "It's beautiful, Mom," Stephanie said, seeming genuinely touched as she opened the gift. Eric examined it with a smirk. "Is that real silver? It looks like something from one of those mall kiosks." He laughed as if making a joke, but his eyes remained cold. I watched my daughter's smile fade as she quickly put the bracelet back in its box. "It's very sweet, Mom. Thank you." Later that evening, Eric presented her with a diamond tennis bracelet that must have cost thousands. The way Stephanie gasped and immediately put it on while my gift remained in its box told me everything. As months passed, I noticed Stephanie beginning to mirror Eric's values and judgments. My practical daughter, who once rolled her eyes at designer labels, now spoke knowledgeably about luxury brands. She began criticizing things she had once loved: her modest upbringing, our family traditions, even my appearance. "Mom, have you thought about updating your hairstyle?" she asked during one visit. "And maybe investing in some higher quality clothes. Eric says presentation is everything in today's world." I tried to adapt, buying new outfits and even changing my hairstyle, but nothing seemed good enough for their standards. Each change I made only invited more criticism. 9 months into their relationship, Stephanie called to announce their engagement. Eric had proposed with a massive diamond ring during a weekend trip to Paris. "I'm happy if you're happy," I told her, trying to sound enthusiastic despite my reservations. The wedding planning quickly became a showcase of Eric's family's wealth and influence. His mother, Caroline, a formidable Boston socialite, took charge immediately. My suggestions were politely acknowledged, then promptly ignored. When I offered to help address invitations, Caroline informed me they had hired a professional calligrapher. "We want everything just so," she explained with a tight smile. Determined to contribute meaningfully to my only daughter's wedding, I sold my collection of antique silver passed down from my grandmother. The $8,000 I received went toward their wedding flowers, an arrangement that Caroline redesigned anyway. The elaborate ceremony at Chicago's most exclusive hotel felt more like a business networking event than a celebration of love. I sat in the front row as mother of the bride, but felt like an extra in someone else's production. At the reception, I was seated at a table with distant relatives while Eric's family commanded the center of the room. After the wedding, Stephanie and Eric moved into his luxurious home in Lake Forest, one of Chicago's most exclusive suburbs. The 30-minute drive from my modest condominium might as well have been 1,000 miles. During the first 2 years of their marriage, I watched my daughter slip further away. My weekly calls went to voicemail more often than not. When Stephanie did call, our conversations were brief and superficial. "Sorry, Mom, we're just so busy with the club events and Eric's work functions," became her standard explanation. When I suggested visiting their new home, there was always a reason to postpone. Eventually, I was invited for an afternoon tea that felt more like a formal appointment than a family visit. Their house was something out of Architectural Digest: enormous rooms with soaring ceilings, museum-quality art on the walls, and furniture that looked too perfect to actually use. As Stephanie gave me the tour, she sounded like a real estate agent rather than a daughter showing her childhood home. "The kitchen features Italian marble countertops and custom cabinetry," she recited mechanically. "It's beautiful," I said. "But where do you actually live? Which rooms make you happy?" She looked at me strangely, as if the question made no sense. That first Christmas after their wedding was particularly painful. I spent weeks knitting a cashmere throw in soft blues to match their living room and baked Eric's favorite cookies based on a recipe Stephanie had once mentioned. When I presented these gifts, Eric barely glanced at the throw. "Interesting texture," he commented before setting it aside. The homemade cookies were left untouched as he praised the imported chocolates his mother had sent. Later, I overheard him tell Stephanie, "Honestly, why not just buy something from the list we sent? These homemade things just collect dust." I began learning about family events through social media rather than from my daughter. Stephanie posted photos of vacations to Aspen and the Amalfi Coast dinner parties with celebrities and charity galas where she sparkled in designer gowns. Each image showed a life increasingly unrecognizable and inaccessible to me. During one dinner at their home, Eric made several comments about my neighborhood becoming unsafe and suggested I consider moving. "Property values in areas like yours are plummeting," he said between sips of expensive wine. Smart money is investing in communities with better demographics. I recognized the coded language for what it was. My diverse middle-class neighborhood wasn't exclusive enough for his tastes. Stephanie nodded along, seemingly unbothered by his thinly veiled prejudice. As my daughter absorbed more of Eric's attitudes, her criticisms of me became more frequent and cutting. My clothes were dated, my car embarrassing, my opinions unsophisticated. Each interaction left me feeling smaller and less significant in her life. After one particularly hurtful comment about my lack of cultural refinement, I gathered my courage to address the growing distance between us. I invited Stephanie for lunch at a neutral location, a quiet cafe halfway between our homes. "I feel like we're drifting apart," I told her gently. "I miss the relationship we used to have." Stephanie sighed impatiently. "Mom, people grow and change. Eric and I move in different circles now. You're just being too sensitive about normal life transitions." "There's nothing normal about a daughter becoming ashamed of her mother," I said, fighting back tears. "Don't be so dramatic," she replied, checking her watch. "I have a committee meeting at 2. We should wrap this up." 3 months later, Stephanie announced her pregnancy via text message. Despite the impersonal notification, I was overjoyed at becoming a grandmother. I called immediately, full of questions and offers of support. "We've already hired a designer for the nursery," she informed me, "and Mom, please don't go overboard with baby things. We're going for a minimalist aesthetic." I spent weeks creating a beautiful baby quilt incorporating fabrics that told our family story, pieces of Stephanie's childhood dress material from her father's favorite shirt, and new silks in the elegant gray palette she now preferred. When I presented it during a baby shower I was invited to at the last minute, Stephanie thanked me politely. 2 weeks later, during a rare visit to their home, the quilt was nowhere to be seen. When I inquired, Eric mentioned they had donated some excess baby items to charity. My grandson Jacob was born on a crisp October morning. I rushed to the hospital but was told by a nurse that family visits were being coordinated through the baby's father. I waited 6 hours in the lobby before being allowed a brief 20-minute visit. Holding Jacob for the first time was magical. His tiny fingers wrapped around mine, his newborn scent bringing back precious memories of Stephanie's infancy. But even this moment was tainted by Eric hovering nearby, checking his watch and reminding me not to overstimulate the baby. In the months that followed, my visits were limited and supervised. Each one required advanced scheduling and rarely lasted more than an hour. Stephanie followed Eric's parenting theories, rigidly dismissing my gentle suggestions with, "The parenting books we're following recommend differently." As Jacob grew into a toddler, I treasured our limited time together. I would arrive with small, thoughtful gifts, simple wooden toys or soft books that aligned with their aesthetic preferences. Still, there was always an excuse why my visits needed to be brief. Jacob's nap schedule, an upcoming playdate, Eric's parents dropping by. Through it all, I held on to hope that as Jacob grew, the barriers might soften. I never imagined that the Thanksgiving dinner I'd been looking forward to for weeks would become the breaking point of our already fragile relationship. The invitation to Thanksgiving at Stephanie and Eric's home came via a formal email rather than a personal call. Still, I was thrilled at the opportunity to spend the holiday with my family, especially 16-month-old Jacob, who I hadn't seen in nearly a month. Despite knowing Eric preferred catered food, I spent days preparing homemade dishes that had been part of our family Thanksgiving tradition for generations, my mother's cornbread stuffing cranberry relish from fresh berries, and a pumpkin pie with a hand-crimped crust. The morning of Thanksgiving, I visited the salon for a trim and style, wanting to look my best. I chose a new outfit, burgundy slacks, and a cream cashmere sweater I'd splurged on specifically for the occasion. The final touch was a bottle of expensive wine recommended by the shop owner as impressive. I arrived at their Lake Forest mansion at 2:00, 30 minutes before the invited time, hoping to help with last-minute preparations. The housekeeper who answered the door looked confused by my early arrival and my armload of dishes. "The kitchen is already quite busy with the catering staff," she explained apologetically. "Mrs. Sullivan asked that guests wait in the sitting room." So there I sat alone in their formal living room, listening to the sounds of activity elsewhere in the house. Through the large windows, I watched as a luxury SUV pulled into the circular driveway. Eric immediately appeared at the front door to greet his parents, embracing them warmly and calling for Stephanie to come welcome them. The contrast to my own reception was painful, but not surprising. I smoothed my sweater and practiced my smile, determined to make the best of the day. The dining room table was a magazine-worthy display, crystal glassware, fine china, and an elaborate centerpiece of autumn flowers and gold-accented pumpkins. Name cards directed each guest to their assigned seat. I noticed mine was positioned at the far end, away from Stephanie, Eric, and little Jacob. Eric's parents, Richard and Caroline, dominated the conversation from the moment we sat down. They discussed their recent Mediterranean cruise, their winter plans for their Palm Beach home, and the exclusive preschool where they'd secured a spot for Jacob. "Beverly, do you travel much?" Caroline asked during a brief lull, though her tone suggested she already knew the answer. "Not extensively," I admitted. "But I've been saving for a trip to the national parks next summer." "How quaint," she replied with a thin smile before turning to discuss Jackson Hole real estate with another guest. When Jacob became fussy midway through dinner, I instinctively rose to help. "Would you like me to walk with him for a bit?" I offered. "Mom," Stephanie said sharply, "he's fine. We don't pick him up every time he makes a noise. That creates dependency issues." The toddler's cries increased until Eric's mother stepped in, lifting Jacob with practiced ease. "Come to Grandma Caroline," she cooed, and Stephanie beamed approvingly. I focused on my plate, fighting back the hurt. Throughout the meal, Eric made several humorous comments at my expense, my unfamiliarity with the wine being served, my outdated views on child development, my interesting choice of sweater. "Beverly still shops at department stores," he told the table with a chuckle. "A dying breed, just like the stores themselves." Each jab earned polite laughter from his family and friends, while Stephanie remained silently complicit. I maintained my composure, determined not to give them the satisfaction of seeing me upset. As dessert was being served by the catering staff, my homemade pie nowhere in sight, the conversation turned to holiday plans. "We should discuss Christmas," Caroline announced. "Richard and I are thinking of hosting at the Vale House this year. The slopes are magnificent in December." Seeing an opening, I spoke up. "I was actually hoping to host Christmas Eve at my place this year. Nothing fancy, but I thought it would be nice for Jacob to experience some of our family traditions." The table fell silent. Eric and Stephanie exchanged glances. "Mom," Stephanie said finally, her voice cool and dismissive. "Our holiday calendar is already quite full, with commitments to people we actually want to see." I must have looked stunned because she continued with an exasperated sigh. "Honestly, the best gift would be for you to be gone. Give us some space. Eric's family is more than enough." Eric nodded, adding, "We've been meaning to have this conversation. Our lives are moving in a different direction with people more aligned with our values and lifestyle." The room swam before my eyes as blood rushed to my face. Every guest stared at me with a mixture of embarrassment and morbid curiosity. Caroline wore a satisfied smirk, while Richard studiously examined his dessert. I see, I managed to say, my voice barely audible. The remainder of the evening passed in a blur. I declined coffee, made a quiet excuse about not feeling well, and left as soon as it was socially acceptable. In the privacy of my car parked at the end of their long driveway, the tears finally came, hot, silent streams that continued all the way home. The night after Thanksgiving was the longest of my life. I sat in my parked car for nearly an hour before finding the strength to enter my empty condominium. Inside, the contrast between my modest home and the opulent mansion I'd just left seemed starker than ever. I moved through the rooms like a ghost, touching photographs from happier times. Stephanie's graduation, our trip to the Grand Canyon, her father holding her as a newborn. In each image, I searched for clues to how we had arrived at this painful juncture. Sleep eluded me entirely. I lay awake replaying Stephanie's cutting words. The best gift would be for you to be gone. Each mental repetition brought fresh waves of grief and humiliation. By dawn, my pillowcase was damp with tears, and my thoughts had circled through anger, despair, and confusion countless times. As morning light filtered through my curtains, I made coffee and sat at my small kitchen table feeling hollowed out. On the refrigerator, Jacob's handprint from his first birthday mocked me, a rare moment when I'd been permitted to do a messy activity with my grandson. What went wrong? I whispered to the empty room. When did I become someone to be ashamed of? I spent the day moving mechanically through household tasks, cleaning already clean surfaces, and reorganizing drawers that needed no attention. Anything to keep my hands busy while my mind processed the seismic shift in my reality. By evening, emotional exhaustion gave way to unexpected clarity. I realized with startling certainty that I had enabled this situation. For years, I had accepted Stephanie's increasingly dismissive treatment. I had changed my appearance, apologized for my existence, and contorted myself to fit into smaller and smaller spaces in my daughter's life. No more, I said aloud, the sound of my voice breaking the day-long silence. The following morning, I made a decision that would change everything. I remembered the investment I'd made 15 years earlier, a former patient, Dr. Carr. Martin Weiss had started a medical technology company and offered me the chance to invest my modest savings as thanks for the care I'd provided during his recovery from heart surgery. At the time, it had seemed risky, but something about Dr. Weiss's integrity and vision convinced me. I invested $35,000, almost everything I had, and told no one, not even Stephanie. It had been my secret safety net growing quietly over the years. 2 months before Thanksgiving, I'd received news that the company was being acquired by a major health corporation. My investment had multiplied beyond my wildest expectations. The final papers had been signed the previous week, and the substantial funds were now sitting in my account, something Stephanie and Eric knew nothing about. With newfound purpose, I booted up my rarely used laptop and began researching options. By midday, I had scheduled meetings with my financial advisor and a real estate attorney. "Beverly, this is quite a sum," Mr. Peterson, my financial advisor, said 2 days later, reviewing my accounts. "Are you certain about liquidating a portion for this purpose?" "Absolutely certain," I replied with more confidence than I'd felt in years. Next came the meeting with the attorney to ensure my plan was legally sound. "It's an unusual gift," she admitted, "but perfectly legal if executed properly. We'll need to prepare specific documentation." Over the next week, I moved methodically through my plan, experiencing a strange mix of sorrow and liberation. I arranged for the mortgage payoff, ensuring all paperwork would be completed before Christmas. I researched Hawaiian real estate, and found a beautiful one-bedroom condo for rent in a community for active seniors in Maui. "It's available immediately," the property manager told me over the phone. "We can have it ready whenever you arrive." I booked a one-way ticket for Christmas Eve, feeling the symbolic weight of the date. Then came the difficult task of deciding what to take with me and what to leave behind. 30 years in one home had accumulated a lifetime of possessions, most of which I realized I could live without. I donated furniture to a women's shelter, gave treasured books to the local library, and packed cherished photographs and mementos into 2 suitcases. The process of letting go was painful, yet strangely freeing. The final step was writing the letter. I sat at my desk for hours drafting and redrafting, wanting to express my feelings without accusation or bitterness. The finished letter was 4 pages long, handwritten on stationery Stephanie had given me years ago. In it, I explained my decision to pay off their mortgage as a final gift, one that would free them from financial pressure while also symbolically releasing them from any obligation to include me in their lives. I expressed love for Jacob and hope that someday they might allow me back into his life. I detailed my plan to move to Hawaii, providing my new address and phone number should they ever want to reach me. "I am giving you what you asked for," I wrote in conclusion. "My absence. I hope it brings you the happiness you seek. Know that my door and heart remain open should you ever change your mind." As I sealed the envelope attaching it to the mortgage satisfaction document, I felt a complex mix of emotions, grief for what was lost, fear of the unknown future, but also a surprising sense of power. For the first time in years, I was making a choice not based on Stephanie's approval, but on my own well-being. The week before Christmas, I finalized all arrangements for my departure. The mortgage payoff was processed with documentation confirming Eric and Stephanie's home was now completely paid for the $850,000 balance eliminated by my gift. On December 23rd, I drove to their Lake Forest neighborhood and slipped the envelope containing both the mortgage document and my letter into their mailbox. I timed my visit for mid-afternoon, when I knew they would both be at work and Jacob would be with his nanny. Standing at the end of their driveway for what I believed might be the last time I whispered a goodbye, not just to them, but to the version of myself who had accepted scraps of affection for too long. The following day, Christmas Eve, I locked my condo door, leaving keys with a neighbor who would help with the eventual sale. At O'Hare Airport, holiday travelers rushed past with excited children and armloads of gifts. The contrast to my 2 suitcases and one-way ticket wasn't lost on me. "Flying somewhere warm for the holidays?" the check-in agent asked cheerfully. "Starting a new chapter?" I replied, surprising myself with the steady confidence in my voice. The flight to Maui was nearly 9 hours. I watched Chicago disappear beneath clouds, the city lights fading like my past life. Somewhere over the Pacific, as other passengers slept or watched movies, I felt a weight lifting from my shoulders. When we landed in Maui, the humid flower-scented air hit me as I exited the plane. The temperature was 78 degrees warmer than the 20-degree Chicago winter I'd left behind. Already it felt like a different world. A taxi took me to my new residence, a 1-bedroom condo in a community called Haile Maluhia, House of Peace. The property manager, a cheerful woman named Leilani, was waiting despite the late hour. "Aloha and welcome home," she said, handing me the keys. "The place is stocked with basics to get you through Christmas. Real estate moves at island pace, so whenever you're ready to look at permanent options, just let me know." That first night in Hawaii, I slept better than I had in months. Whether from emotional exhaustion or the gentle sound of waves through the open window, I didn't wake until morning sunlight flooded the room. Christmas Day. I took a solitary walk on the beach, watching families celebrate with picnics and swimming. Instead of feeling lonely, I experienced a curious sense of possibility. For the first time in decades, my time was entirely my own. My phone remained silent that day and the next. I hadn't expected immediate contact, but part of me had hoped for at least acknowledgement of the substantial gift I'd left. By the third day, I made a decision to fully embrace my new life, rather than waiting by the phone. I joined a morning beach walking group, meeting my first local friend Kapua, a retired school teacher who had moved from Oahu 5 years earlier. "What brings you to the island?" she asked as we walked along the shore. "A fresh start," I replied, surprised at how easy it was to talk to this stranger. "Those are the best kind of beginnings," she said with a knowing smile. "The ones we choose for ourselves." A full week passed before my phone rang with Stephanie's number. My heart raced as I answered. "What exactly do you think you're doing?" Her voice was tight with anger. "Hello to you too, Stephanie," I replied calmly. "This mortgage stunt? What is this, Mom? Some kind of manipulation?" I took a deep breath before answering. "It's exactly what I explained in my letter. A gift with no strings attached. You wanted me gone, so I'm respecting your wishes. By running away to Hawaii, do you have any idea how this looks? Eric's parents think you've lost your mind. I'm not concerned with appearances anymore," I told her. "I'm focusing on living authentically." "Where did you even get that kind of money?" she demanded. "Have you been hiding financial resources while making us feel guilty about supporting you?" The accusation stung, but I maintained my composure. "I made an investment years ago that recently paid off. I chose to share that blessing with you despite how you've treated me. Eric says this creates all kinds of financial complications, taxes, and gift implications. He's furious." "The attorney handled all the tax details," I assured her. "There are no complications for you, only benefits." Our conversation continued in this vein for several minutes, her accusing me, responding with newfound calm. When she finally ran out of steam, I simply said, "I love you, Stephanie. That hasn't changed. When you're ready to talk rather than attack, I'm here." After hanging up, I walked to the beach and watched the sunset, letting the conversation settle in my heart. Though painful, I recognized it as necessary, the first step in establishing a new dynamic. The following day, Eric left a scathing voicemail about my financial interference, creating unwanted obligations. I didn't return the call. 3 days later, Stephanie texted, "Mom, I don't understand why you're being so dramatically manipulative. Everyone thinks you've lost your mind." I replied simply, "I'm sorry you see it that way. My door is open when you're ready for a real conversation. I love you." Then I put down my phone and joined a volunteer group cleaning a local beach. With each piece of litter I collected, I felt myself reclaiming a piece of my identity. 6 months in Hawaii transformed me in ways I never could have imagined. My skin developed a healthy glow from morning beach walks, and the constant tension I'd carried in my shoulders melted away in the island warmth. I joined a community garden, learning to grow tropical fruits and vegetables under the patient guidance of Hawaiian elders. I volunteered at the local hospital, offering comfort to tourists facing medical emergencies far from home. I even took hula lessons, laughing at my clumsy attempts alongside supportive classmates. My small circle of friends expanded weekly. There was Kapua from my walking group, who introduced me to authentic Hawaiian culture with respect and generosity. David, a widower from California, who ran the community book club. Maria, a retired flight attendant who organized weekend hiking expeditions to hidden island treasures. These new connections shared one vital quality: they accepted me exactly as I was. There were no judgments about my modest lifestyle, No cutting remarks about my appearance or background. For the first time in years, I felt valued for my authentic self. 3 months after arriving, I started a small business offering nursing consultations to elderly tourists. Many seniors visiting the island had medical concerns, but were reluctant to seek formal care while on vacation. My service provided peace of mind and practical advice, allowing them to enjoy their trips safely. "You've found your niche," Kapua observed as my client list grew, "using your skills to help others while supporting yourself." Communication with Stephanie remained minimal during these months, an occasional text exchange usually initiated by me asking about Jacob. Her responses were brief and uninformative, but I noticed a gradual decrease in hostility. Then one morning in July, a text appeared that shifted everything. "How are you doing in Hawaii?" Such a simple question, but the first time she had expressed any interest in my new life. I responded honestly, but without overwhelming detail, ending with a recent photo of me at a community luau. 2 days later, she sent a picture of Jacob playing at the park. This tentative exchange opened a narrow channel of communication. Over the following weeks, our texts became slightly more frequent and personal. I was careful not to push, allowing Stephanie to set the pace of our reconnection. In September, she called on a Sunday afternoon. "Eric and I are separating," she said without preamble. I sat down stunned by the news and her choice to share it with me. "I'm sorry to hear that," I said carefully. "Are you okay?" "Not really," she admitted, her voice catching. "Things have been bad for a while. I just couldn't see it clearly until recently." Over the next hour, Stephanie revealed what I had long suspected. Eric's controlling behavior had extended far beyond what I had witnessed. He monitored her spending, criticized her parenting, and isolated her from friends who didn't meet his standards. His charming public persona masked private emotional abuse that had gradually eroded her confidence and independence. "What changed?" I asked gently. "Honestly, your letter, and what you did. At first, I was just angry and confused. But over time, I kept thinking about what you wrote about choosing your own happiness. It made me question why I was so unhappy in a supposedly perfect life." I listened as she described the painful process of recognizing patterns in her marriage that mirrored how we had treated me. "I became someone I don't recognize," she confessed. "Someone who would hurt her own mother to please a man who was never satisfied anyway." "We all make mistakes," I told her. "What matters is that you're finding your way back to yourself." Our conversation ended with Stephanie asking if she might visit sometime. "Jacob asks about Grandma Beverly. I've been showing him your pictures." "I would love that," I said, careful to contain my excitement. "Whenever you're ready." 3 months later, almost exactly 1 year after I had left Chicago, I stood at the Maui airport waiting for Stephanie and Jacob's flight to arrive. My hands trembled slightly with nervous anticipation. When they emerged through the gate, Jacob riding on Stephanie's hip, I barely recognized either of them. My grandson had grown from toddler to little boy, while Stephanie looked both older and somehow more like her younger self, the artificial polish stripped away to reveal the daughter I remembered. "Grandma," Jacob said tentatively, clearly prompted beforehand. "Yes, sweetheart," I answered, tears threatening. Stephanie set him down and he approached me with childish directness. "Do you live with the ocean now?" I laughed through my tears. "I do. Would you like to see it?" He nodded enthusiastically, and just like that, the ice was broken. The week of their visit became a delicate dance of rediscovery. During Jacob's naps or after his bedtime, Stephanie and I had difficult but necessary conversations about our past relationship and the pain we had both experienced. "I don't expect you to forgive me right away," she said one evening as we sat on my lanai. "What I said to you that Thanksgiving was unforgivable." "I've already forgiven you," I told her truthfully. "But rebuilding trust takes time for both of us." We established new boundaries during those honest conversations. I would not return to Chicago having found true contentment in my island life. Stephanie would not expect me to resume the role of ever-accommodating mother, always available on her terms. We would build something new, a relationship between adult women who respected each other's independence. Jacob took to island life with childish enthusiasm, collecting shells, building sand castles, and charming my friends with his curiosity. Watching him interact with Kapua as she taught him to make a simple lei, I felt a fullness in my heart I hadn't experienced in years. "Your ohana is beautiful," Kapua told me privately. "The broken places are healing." On their last evening in Maui, Stephanie asked the question I had been anticipating. "Do you regret what you did, paying off our mortgage and leaving?" I considered carefully before answering. I regret that it came to that point. I regret the years of tension and hurt feelings. But no, I don't regret my decision. It freed both of us in different ways. She nodded slowly. It forced me to see the truth about my marriage and myself. I just wish it hadn't taken something so dramatic. Sometimes the most loving thing we can do is create space for truth to emerge, I said, even when that space is an ocean away. When I hugged them goodbye at the airport, promises of future visits were exchanged. Jacob clutched a turtle-stuffed animal I had given him, while Stephanie carried a journal full of reflections from our week together. "This isn't an ending," I reminded them both. "It's a new beginning on better terms." As their plane took off toward the horizon, I felt no sense of loss, only profound gratitude for second chances and the wisdom to recognize them when they appear. Sometimes the greatest gift you can give to those you love isn't your constant presence or endless accommodation. Sometimes it's showing them through your own example how to live with dignity and self-respect. And sometimes the journey to that lesson begins with the painful words, "The best gift would be for you to be gone." Have you ever had to make a difficult choice that seemed like walking away, but was actually the bravest form of love? I'd love to read your stories in the comments below. If this resonated with you, please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to hear more stories of reinvention and healing. Share with someone who might need permission to prioritize their own well-being today. Thank you for traveling this journey with me, and remember, it's never too late to write a new chapter in your story.